A group of students is trapped in a bunker and must reproduce to save humanity. Petra and James are relaxing before heading to school. Petra is a top student who always gets the best grades, while James struggles academically. And Petra often helps him study. She gets out of bed and reminds him not to be late for his philosophy class. James assures her he will be on time, but he arrives a minute late. Professor Zimmett is frustrated with his tardiness, but allows him to enter the classroom. Soon, James and Petra will graduate and move on to college. This is their final philosophy class. The professor begins by expressing his disappointment in how most people use their intellect. He asks the students to share examples of thought experiments. A student named Chip mentions an experiment involving a monkey. He explains that if a monkey is given a typewriter and enough time, it will eventually type out Hamlet. With infinite time and random keystrokes, the monkey will produce a book. Other students contribute their own examples. Chip then presents a scenario where several people are tied to train tracks. The task is to decide who will die, one person or several. But Chip alters the scenario. Now they can push a heavy man onto the tracks to save the larger group. A girl argues that this is murder, but Chip insists both scenarios are the same. No matter the choice, one becomes a killer. The professor then introduces a game. In this game, a nuclear apocalypse has happened, and the students must decide who will enter the shelter. He distributes cards with each student's new profession written on them. The game rules state that their personal traits remain, but they now have different roles. Only 10 individuals can enter the bunker. The shelter is stocked with food and oxygen for one full year. Those who survive inside must work to rebuild the human race. One girl refuses to take part in the experiment, but the professor insists she has no option. Petra also wants to leave, but eventually changes her mind. The game has started. Toby quickly admits he is just a poet. The professor claims he saved Toby from suffering. The students are upset that the professor has a gun and that he killed Toby, but he argues that they couldn't bring him to the shelter. Ginny, a surgeon, is chosen to go to the shelter. The Harper and the designer are not selected, but the senator is allowed in due to his legal knowledge. James, a farmer, is also accepted. The realtor and the ice cream vendor are eliminated. The astronaut is deemed unnecessary for the new world, but the psychotherapist and the chemist are chosen to enter the shelter. Petra is fortunate as well. As a builder, she will be valuable in the shelter and the new world. The students must select the last participant, an unknown professor or an opera singer, and they choose the professor. The students break off to discuss their decisions. Two girls find two turtles and decide to take them along. Meanwhile, the professor eliminates those who did not make the cut. The students refuse to let such a dangerous person into the shelter and leave him outside. The shelter doors shut, and the countdown begins. It is equipped for the survivors to live in for exactly 1 year. After that time, the water, food, and oxygen will run out, forcing the survivors to venture outside. On the first night, Petra struggles to sleep and decides to check on the professor. She approaches the exit and sees him. He is still alive. The man pulls out a note stating that only he knows the password to the shelter door. Petra gathers everyone, and they are uncertain about what the next year will bring. They can only hope that the professor tricked them and that the shelter doors will open by themselves. Time flies by quickly and their food supply is dwindling. Petra frequently goes to the exit to check on the professor's body. A year passes, and the doors remain shut. They need a password, but none of the survivors have it. They discover a weapons stash and attempt to force the doors open, but to no avail. Soon, they finish their last meal and make turtle soup. Tragically, one student dies and the others resort to making a meal from him. Oxygen levels drop, and the students use weapons to ease their pain. The professor claims they failed because they expelled him. Their quick judgment has cost them dearly. Now, the students realize the professor is the only one with the code. They want to play again. The rules are the same, but the setting has changed a bit. The professor asks them to reveal their cards. The students gain new traits. At the start of the game, the professor sneaks to the shelter to grab a gun without anyone noticing, then returns to ask the students about their new traits. James is still a farmer, but he is gay. This poses a problem in the apocalypse, since he cannot continue his family line, yet he is still welcomed into the shelter. Chip is a carpenter, but has been sterilized, making reproduction impossible for him as well. Many people support him because his job is very important. The girl surgeon might have Ebola, so she is quickly sent away to prevent the disease from spreading. Petra works as a builder and electrician. She has excellent qualities. The zoologist and blogger are removed from the group. The chemist, who has good genetics, is chosen for breeding. The obstetrician is also included in the group. The ice cream vendor is out of the game. A girl with a photographic memory joins the group. The poet is killed by the teacher because he should have taken the last spot in the shelter. The group of survivors is now complete. The eliminated contestants try to escape, but they all die. The survivors enter the shelter and the countdown starts. One night, Petra sees James with another guy. It turns out Peter's actually gay. A new issue arises. The obstetrician suggests everyone pair up to start the breeding process. The only one who can help Petra conceive is the professor. To get back at James, she invites the professor to her room. Months go by, and no girl has become pregnant. The professor proposes swapping girls and taking turns, but one girl refuses. She warns him that if he tries to force them, she will shoot him. The professor leaves to get the gun. He threatens her and demands obedience, but Peter suddenly attacks from behind, and a fight breaks out. Peter grabs a pencil and jabs it into the professor's ear. The professor gets up and heads for the exit of the bunker. He enters the code and opens the doors to kill everyone. James questions why the professor coughed when he handed the card to him and Petra. James grabs the box and discovers a hidden compartment. The professor made special cards for James and Petra, but James is confused about why the professor seems to want to embarrass him. He suggests they play again. This time, they find themselves on an island where a nuclear missile is about to land. The professor returns to the hideout and hides all the weapons. Soon after, Petra thanks him for everything he has done and asks if she can give him a hug. Petra then approaches her friends and asks for the chance to make a choice. She promises to choose honestly. She decides to pick only those who have never been to the shelter before. Among her choices are a harpist, a funny ice cream maker, a singer, and others. The professor is puzzled by Petra's unusual selection. She explains that those she chose will not just survive, they will truly live. Petra asks Chip to take her place in the shelter. The professor disagrees, wanting to survive himself, but he can't find his gun because Petra has taken it. The students push the professor away and enter the shelter, no longer needing him since Petra remembered the door code. Chip chooses to save Petra and sacrifices himself. The selected ones go inside while the others board a boat to escape. A year passes in the shelter without issues. They enjoy their time and have fun. After a year, the bunker doors open and the survivors discover that the world outside is infected except for their device. The professor warns that without skills, they will perish. But Petra insists they never aim to survive. They just wanted to live until fate catches up with them. Surprisingly, the professor is still alive. The remaining students want to launch the rocket to end their survival, but the professor stops them. They ignore him and accept their fate. The professor is puzzled by Petra and the other students' decisions, but Chip steps in to explain that their group managed to survive. They discovered an uninfected island, but everyone except Chip died. Now he struggles daily to reproduce. Although he is sterilized, his chances are very slim. As the lesson wraps up, the students exit, but Petra lingers to speak with the professor. It becomes clear that they share romantic feelings. Petra criticizes the professor for trying to embarrass James earlier. She kisses him goodbye and departs. The professor then goes to his office and retrieves a gun